All right, we're live.
Hey, welcome everybody to Secular Hangout. I am Graceful Atheist, also known as David, and my colleague across the way here is Chris, also known as the Godless Atheist. I'm sorry, the Godless Journey. So many
Godless
people.
atheist. That's like a double. I like
Man,
that.
I forgot who you are, man.
I don't know who I am anymore.
Today we want to talk about the subject of coming out as an atheist or after your deconversion, however you identify, what that process looks like, what our experience has been, to what extent we're still in the closet. So we'll just start off with, I think, Chris, you had an interesting response to this when I brought this up as a topic. Just what was your initial thoughts when I suggested it, and where do you think you're at these days?
I am kind of half in, half out right now. I do have my godless journey. Everything is kind of tied to that, but that's not tied to me, so to speak.
Right,
I don't share anything on Facebook. I don't hardly ever go on Facebook anyway, but I am super active on Twitter. But again, it's a separate Twitter account. I
right.
mean, I've told a handful of people, but not not public knowledge. I guess is how I would put it.
Right, right. Yeah, I think I'm in a similar place in that I'm out to my immediate family. I'm out to some of the extended family. The in-laws studiously ignore the fact that I'm out. uh, and my very closest friends, but I have a huge, like you talk about Facebook, I've got old hometown people and college people and high school people that I just haven't bumped into yet, and for the sake of my still believing family, my immediate family, I haven't made the super public "hi, I'm an atheist" kind of statements, really just as a being respectful for the believers in my family, because they wouldn't enjoy that. They wouldn't like that. And so really I've been circumspect in that regard, and thus the pseudonym, the Graceful Atheist, similar to yourself. So I'm able to express myself fully under that pseudonym. Obviously we're doing, these are public, and on YouTube, for streaming. So it's not like we're hiding in any way, but rather, haven't made, huge public declarations, that kind of thing. So how about, for, your immediate family members? How did you go about telling, like, let's say your wife or anyone else that you have told?
Sure. I mean, with my wife, I kind of just came out one day. I was like, "Hey, I think I'm an atheist."
Yeah,
In the car, and that was kind of like it. She wasn't. She was kind of surprised, but not super surprised with how I had been up until that point. With the kind of back and forth I've had in my mind with um, the whole God thing, and she took it pretty well. Um, there were some struggles. It's like my whole foundation was built on Christianity,
yeah,
so she kind of sees me as a different person because of that. But I'm like, I'm still the same guy. It's not like anything's really changed.
right,
Um, but um, told my mom about it in kind of a similar fashion, and she was she was surprised because I had been such a religious person for the better part of 20 years,
yeah,
that it just kind of caught her off guard. But it's funny because she just recently got into Christianity. She's been listening to Joel Olstein and gotten really big into that.
yeah,
But prior to that, she was a religious, I would call it.
yeah,
She dabbled in like Wicca and kind of just definitely nothing mainstream religion wise. So we kind of flop positions, but
Right. Right.
she
Interesting.
she definitely understands my mindset. So um, that's kind of how that is. I haven't talked to my dad about it. I don't really plan to. Um,
Okay.
he's very very religious, very conservative, very much the opposite of where I am right now, and um, I don't know how that conversation would play out.
Right.
Um, and what relationship we do have, I don't want to go away.
Right. Right. Yeah. So I think let me, if I can just respond to that a little bit.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Please.
The what brought the subject up for me in general was the last two episodes of the Life After God podcast, and uh, the Brian Peck, who runs Room to Thrive, and he's a licensed therapist, and he specializes in talking with people who have gone through the deconversion process. Anyway, he and two of his colleagues did a very extended interview that was split into two parts, and they were talking through kind of from the professional angle, from their angle as therapists, uh, what they talk with people who are going through the deconversion process or have recently gone through it, what that's like for them, and they talked a little bit about the coming out process as well, and the thing that really just resonated with me was about the need to protect the relationships with our loved ones, to be gentle with them. And I've written about this myself. That was my experience, and I'll tell my story in just a second. But I feel like it's a very human tendency. You learn this brand new thing, you feel this incredible amount of freedom, and you feel a fair amount of disdain for your former faith, right? And it's real easy to lash out, right? I mean, I think that's the natural response, is to just lash out, or to make someone feel stupid, right? To say things that are hurtful or demeaning, and I think that's the easy response. And one of the things, again, from that podcast, and that just resonated with me, is about the need to be very gentle. And that same gentleman, Brian Peck, has said in the past, and I really love the way he said this. You've gone through the process, you've gone through the emotion, the kind of arguing with God, as it were, God. You've gone through all kinds of the process, and then by the time you're telling your loved one, they're at step zero. They haven't done any of that, and you are hitting them cold. And the natural response would be to be, want them to accept you 100%, and anything less than that would feel like rejection. Meaning you, as the person who has deconverted, feeling rejected by the believer in your life. But if you step back from that for a moment and see that they are literally at step zero, or at step -1, right? They're not even on the radar yet, possibly. And it gives you a little bit of a perspective of empathy, and the need to gently tell them. So sorry to just dominate there, but you talking about not being necessarily sure how the conversation would go with your dad. I can totally respect that. I think it would be a difficult thing, right?
Yeah, and he and I never had like a super close relationship. It's always been kind of surface level. But
Yeah.
I'm kind of lucky in a spot that he is currently not going to church because he hasn't found one that he likes in his area.
Mm-hmm.
So I kind of use that same thing. I just haven't found a church I like. So
Right. Right.
not lie at all.
Yeah. Yeah.
So and it's just I've lost my train of thought, but it's we have, certain conversation points we always used to have that we don't have those areas anymore. But I'd rather have a more limited conversation topic list than no conversation topic list at all.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, I hear you. So, I wanted to share my experience with my wife. I was the most concerned about telling her. She's a very devout Christian. She's, has a, a deep sense of her identity is tied up in her faith. Mm-hmm. And so it's about 2015 summer-ish, and I realized, I knew I was done, and and that not only was I done, I really identified as an atheist, right? Like, did that? I just, I didn't go through a super long questioning phase, is what I'm trying to get across. Mm-hmm. And I think I've talked about before, but I spent a couple of months of just, hiding, reading books, and and not telling anyone. Hey, if we got Christine, hey there, how's it going?
keep going. I was
sure. I'm kind of telling my coming out story to my wife. So I was hiding and really just absorbing as many resources as I possibly could, getting things straight in my mind of what it was that I believed and why, or what I didn't believe and why. And I knew that I had to tell my wife because that was going to be a problem, right? If I didn't tell her, trying to hold a secret back like that would be destructive to the relationship, right? And again, I was just terrified that I thought there's a non-zero probability that she might leave me, right? Like, we have and had a very good relationship, but this was breaking the contract that we had made with each other, right? She understood when she married me that we were Christians, and and had the reasonable assumption that we would be throughout all of our lifetimes. And so here I was, breaking something that foundational. So I was just terrified. So anyway, we were on vacation, and I'm secretly reading some humanist manifesto thing.
you have it tucked inside your Bible, so it looks like your Bible.
Yes, that kind of thing. And literally, and my heart is pounding, my palms are sweating, and I know I've got to tell her. And it's in the quiet of the evening. I've got no more excuses. It's been like 2 months since I knew I deconverted, and I've just finally said, I've got to tell you, I'm having some problems with faith right now. and it was kind of like a snowball. As I got to talk about it, I was more and more direct, and, made it abundantly clear that I was done. Right. And I think the hardest part about that process is, how much I love this person, and I knew that I was sticking a knife into her heart and just twisting it. Right. I could feel all of that pain as I was telling her. She was amazing. It has been, a process. I don't think that for our believing family members or close friends, I think it's an ongoing thing. There's the initial shock, and then there's an ongoing conversation. But that's my story. It was very, very intense. My wife handled things very, very well, but still, I knew that I crushed her that night, and that must have been extremely difficult for her. What I did try to do is convey to her how much I love her, and that actually becoming a humanist, like, that actually has more meaning now that and I was trying again, what we started this whole thing about, trying to protect the relationships. I was just trying to see things from her side and communicate to her to assuage any fears that she might have that I was going to leave, because I had no intention of doing that. Right. Like, I was just as committed to the marriage, even though my faith perspective had changed.
Wow.
Yeah, that's it's an interesting thing. You get married in a church, and you make these vows before God, And then it's not like the promise you made becomes null and void.
Right.
And I think that that's something that religiosity kind of ingrains in people. It's like, well, if you've got no ultimate accountability, then you could just do whatever you want.
Right. Well, and there's the scripture in the Bible talks about being unequally yoked, right?
Right.
And so there is that. There's like, I can imagine you thinking like, well, now maybe I can't be the support. Sorry, my cat is. Now I can't be the support, the Christian support for her, that I was. Just the simple act of not being able to say that you're praying for them.
Right. Oh man.
Is huge. Just being like, yeah, I'm hoping for good things for you. Just them hearing that you saying that instead of I'm praying for you or something can be just this ginormous burden on both of you,
Right. Right. And just silly things. Bless you when she sneezes, right? Like, it just feels like I say it anyway, but it feels wrong. Now definitely it's been some time now. We've worked those things out, but in the beginning, those were awkward moments. So
yeah. And you have to, like, you're rediscovering yourself too right now, which is big. And so that's like huge for her, I'm sure, to rediscover you and, learn you as you're learning you.
Right.
That can be huge. So that's really tough. But it's great that.
How about you, though? I want to give you the time here to share your story as well. Like,
so I have any interesting stories when it comes to coming out. I mean, my mom's very, that mom you hear about who's like crazy, not the regular crazy, but no, I love her, but so she is evangelical to a very high degree.
Okay.
She yells. Yeah, she yells at God when she's, angry at him. And yeah, so when I said I didn't believe in God the first time to her was actually a while, a long time after I had deconverted, but she just denied it. She just wouldn't really believe it. Heather and I have also talked about this too, about her parents, how she worries about them because, your family, your parents especially, are like, oh, my child is going to hell. I did something wrong. It's like it's a different element. I mean, if my daughter decided, well, I don't want to like say anything against anyone, but if she decided to do something that I was very against, it would be really hard on me.
Yeah,
and
definitely.
Not even something that I was against, but something, she like, if she got into heroin or something, did something that was detrimental to her, I can imagine how heartbreaking that could be. And so, so I can imagine, where my mom was coming from, when she said that. So, I mean, now she sort of, I don't know. When I talk to my mother, I'm very gentle, and I leave place for her belief in what I say, and I'm like, Mom, look, if you need to pray about it, I understand, when we're having a discussion or a disagreement. So I definitely, I don't want to say that I deceive her, because if she asked me outright, I would say, no, Mom, I don't believe in God. I don't have that connection to this being I don't really see evidence for at this moment. But I can put place to you having that, and that's, I'm sure that's really tough for her, but that's how I am with a lot of my friends. Actually, most of my friends and family hear me, just support their thinking. I'm not the kind of, that's why I don't call myself an atheist, because I think atheists, anti-God,
Right.
is stronger than that. You know, they're trying to get people to see that they don't need God, or that God doesn't exist. They need to take responsibility for that. But I don't consider myself an atheist, because I think maybe some people do need a godhead or a figurehead, or maybe they have this relationship with something inside them that is deeper than I've ever known, you know. And
Right.
so I can't say that I've come out. I mean, my friends will often. I recently talked to one of my friends who has pastors in her family, and she's borderline Calvinist right now, I think, and so she believes in like predestination. She said to me,
So it wasn't your choice anyway.
"What?"
So it wasn't
Right?
your choice anyway.
Well, she says, because I'm concerned about it, that she thinks I'm in the clear. She thinks I'll find God someday, you know. But I'm open with her, and I say, you know, I don't know. I'm still struggling, and I think Heather and I have talked about this. We don't have a very judgmental environment in terms of our friends. We grew up in a school where doubt was understandable, and if you didn't, believe, sometimes it was okay, because you expect those things in trials and tribulations. And I've recently been thinking about like all the reasons why it's hard to come out, all the reasons why it's hard to leave the faith. And one of them is because it's so supportive for doubt, at least for me. It's like, yeah, there's a lot of worldly information out there, that, and maybe we don't have all the answers. And that's true. Yeah, they're not, when my friends say, yeah, science hasn't shown everything, shown a lot of stuff, but still our hypothesis is just that there is no God. It goes both ways. There is a God, there is no God, and certainly as a scientist, I lean one way, and as a faith advocate, they lean another, and so it hasn't been, for me, the coming out process, the hard process that I thought it might be, but that's because I haven't really, it's just sort of a known for me,
Right.
Plus I was the one in school that they always, kind of guessed I would stray anyway.
Funny, we definitely should have had you on the anti-theist discussion we have.
Yeah.
I think
the humanist versus anti-theist. Yeah, I know.
Because I think what you're describing is an anti-theist, is someone who actively says go away from God,
right?
Whereas atheist is more of a I don't believe in God.
Sure.
I get what you're saying, that people have added baggage to the word.
Sure.
Over the years, but and it's going to be hard to argue someone who has that in their mind already.
Well, I'm not disagreeing. I think that to a certain point, it's just semantics, and part of the reason that I left Christianity is because so much of it is semantics, and so it's okay if for me, I just don't want to label myself something that closes me off to those people, and closes. I want them to know that that I'm still supportive of their beliefs. I still understand where their beliefs come from, and that deep, that deep longing for something, I don't know, bigger than yours. I'm not sure what it is, that keeps people on the religious path, but that connection with something that I can't describe. So I can't say that, like, I don't know. I mean, I don't know if I'm not, I guess I'm not an anti-theist then, in your words, but in some other person's words, I'm not an atheist. You know what I mean? So certainly I don't care how other people define it. But
yeah, and I would agree with you that, I think we do get tied up in the semantics a little too much. I think, however you identify for yourself is,
right.
Okay. Right.
Yeah. I'm like, I'm not gonna like say that just because you're an atheist means that you're anti-God, certainly I would never, but
But
I
do
understand.
want to segue from this and just we were talking about the question of what is our responsibility when we are talking to people who might assume we have faith. To should we be disabusing them of that? Should we should we walk around with a sign that says I'm an atheist? When are we responsible to kind of out ourselves just out in the general public?
I think that's up to us individually, and it's a case-by-case basis. I don't think there's a broad brush you could stroke with that.
Right, but I do understand what you're saying, because with the knowledge that fundamentalist Christianity, well, if you've grown up in the faith, you know a lot, and you can sit there and argue either side. Generally, it's something you can, put forth. So even though I understand that you're saying it is case by case, we do have this duality that doesn't come with being one side or the other. You know what I mean?
Yes. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. I guess I'm trying to get at, there are times when, even with extended family, like I have extended family that they know I don't believe. I don't know if they understand to what extent, but they totally know that, but they kind of ignore it. And so if the conversation, a religious conversation comes up, and they're not excluding me, there's always a part of me that's feeling like, again, I don't want to just blast these people. I care about them. But I also don't want to be dishonest. And where's that fine line? Do you guys experience that at all, or is it just me?
Definitely, I do. Godless, I interrupted you, so I wanted you to continue. Sorry.
Oh, sorry. I'm responding in chat as well. Some interesting conversation going on there, but sorry, it looks like God is not good is trying to call in too, but he will have to wait a minute while I collect my thoughts. But I've lost where I was, so you didn't interrupt me. I think I was done.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, then I'll say, actually, I recently talked, when I was attending my PhD program, I was talking with this group of people who we talked about faith, and we talked about the basis of faith. And I think 2 out of 4 of them, or maybe even 3 out of 4 of us, were Christian. And one of them, at the end of the conversation, I just said, I just want to put it out there that I'm not a believer. And they were like shocked, because of the way that I spoke with such authority on the matter. And I think because they were new people, I didn't feel like I was really deceiving them, but I did want to make sure that they knew. Discomfort with family, though, I think is such a deeper matter, because you want to, as much as I was saying before, you want to respect that they believe. You also want them to respect that you don't, and allow you to be open-minded with your thoughts in those conversations. And it's really hard. I can imagine it's really hard for them, and hard for you, but hard for them to someone they've known for a really long time to adapt to that, And this would be an interesting conversation to have with someone who still had faith. Have you talked to your wife about this? I'm wondering.
A little bit, yeah. I think, again, there's been a spectrum of responses that I've experienced. It was very intense with my wife, and kind of as we negotiated this new idea of what we are together. With some parts of my family, like I say, it's kind of ignored. It's just not talked about. With another part of my family, they're very curious, and they ask me lots of questions. And really, that one is the most comfortable, right? Like it's the response that I would have, right? Like I would have been fascinated if somebody made that radical of a change overnight. I'd want to know why. And so the parts of my family that are curious is, again, the most comfortable and feels like the most natural thing, because then they can ask a question and I can tell them, you know, I still love and respect you, but this is why I can no longer believe this thing. And then I've had, you know, friends who are either that are, you know, not, they're nuns, right? They're non-religious. They, you know, they have no particular stance, and they're like, which also surprised me. You know, I expected, like, you know, so I had no problem kind of, you know, quote unquote coming out to them, but I did expect a reaction, and mostly the reaction has been, yeah, whatever. And that kind of amazed me too. So I don't know.
Oh, I think that's really cool. I think that you definitely, I think you have a responsibility to the relationships individually. Like Godless Journey was saying, it really is an individual basis when you're thinking like, okay, well, how much is this person, you know, how much does this person mean to me? How much does this person fill my bucket? You know, and am I throwing my pearls before swine?
Right.
By wasting my time describing my new faith, or, you know, or is it something that you want to say, no, I am strong about this. So like, certainly, so that they don't think you're wavering, you know. So there are definitely multiple aspects to the feelings that you go through. I can see that. Yeah.
Yeah. I think we have Justin who joined us. Justin, are you able to talk?
Yeah, I'm in here.
Hey, did you have any stories of coming out to anyone?
Yeah, I haven't. I was coming out of school, and then I got roped into a choir thing that I had to go and help with. But I haven't actually heard any of what's been said, really. So where exactly are we in the conversation?
Yeah, we're just talking about you know, after we've discovered that we were no longer believers, kind of post deconversion, however you want to define that. Trying to tell the people that are closest to us in our lives. So I talked a little bit about my telling my wife. Christine talked about her telling her mom. Just anything that comes to mind of, you know, telling good friends, telling family. Have you had that kind of experience?
Well, I was in the closet for a long time because I was raised very religious, and I'm only 19. I still live with my family, and basically there was one night. I don't remember exactly how it came up, but my parents, whenever anything was going on with me, they were always like, "Well, how are you spiritually right now?" Because that was a big thing with, well, if something's wrong, there must be something wrong with your spirit at the moment, kind of people. And so the one night they asked me, and I was just like, I don't know, I don't really care where I am spiritually. And so we kind of got through that. Yeah, I'm not really interested anymore conversation, which was kind of a shock to them, because I hadn't really given any indicator up until that point that I was really wavering. But they asked me one night, and I finally was just like, I'm not really going to hide this anymore. So my mom she's a very talkative person. She's very, if there's something, she wants to discuss things all the time, which didn't always mesh with me all that well. But she actually is the one in my family who talks about religion with me and stuff, and we go back and forth and have our little discussions, and I guess you could call them debates, but it's never really a debate with family.
Right.
My dad, on the other hand, he doesn't really talk all that much about it. I know that neither one of them are very happy with it. They both have a decently hard time with it, but my dad doesn't really talk about it. He just kind of lets it be. So I don't really know where he stands, to be honest.
Right.
My YouTube stuff, I started doing that a couple months ago, and I've been having to do it secretly because they don't know that is something that I'm doing. And I have a feeling that if they know that I don't believe in God, and they know that I'm an atheist, but I feel like it would be a whole nother thing for them if they found out that I was actively atheist online and trying to point out the flaws in religion and things like that. So it's been a lot of sneaking around, recording when nobody's home, recording in the back of my car, stuff like that.
Yeah. Interesting. Okay.
Yeah, so I'm not actually out to most people. I was very, very religious growing up, and then I stopped going to church for a while just because life got in the way, kind of thing, and then I just never ended up going back. So within that span of about a year where life just got in the way and I had too much stuff to do, also corresponded with me eventually coming out of it. So that was pretty much the end of that, and nobody's really, if people ask, I tell them, but most people just assume I'm still Christian because I live in Tennessee.
Right. Well, I think that's an interesting point. Like, just so as far as the public is concerned, so people that we don't have a relationship with, again, it feels awkward sometimes when people assume that you believe, and
for
then,
sure.
Maybe are you obligated to correct them or not? And how do you feel about that?
I don't so much. If somebody asks whether I believe in God or assumes that I do, I tend to just correct them and move on. But just because it's not really something that most people are all that accepting of here in the South. So if it's somebody I don't know all that well and they're trying to get to know me or something, and they have that preconception of me that is incorrect, better to just rip the Band-Aid off right at the start, so that if that's a problem, they just don't waste their time and I don't waste mine.
Okay.
Yeah, I do think it's harder when new people that you don't know who assume. It's a lot more acceptable, a lot easier to make that distinction. You know what I mean? Because you've got, the people that you've known know you a certain way. The people that you meet atheists all the time, or people who are non-atheists or whatever you call them, nuns or whatever. So I don't. I don't think you're wrong in nipping it in the bud. I don't think they're offended. Maybe I don't really know what it's like in Tennessee. Honestly, it might be harder. I've lived in the upstate forever, and everybody's sort of diverse. So there isn't a lot of whoa, you're not a believer here. It's just like, oh, okay, it's just another day or another person or another idea.
Yeah, here coming out as atheist is very, very similar to coming out as like a part of the LGBT community. It's very, or as far as probably more so how it is coming out as LGBT in the even deeper South or Tennessee a couple years ago.
Sure.
But yeah, people don't take kindly to it. Sure. It's a lot of looking down at you and, well, where are your morals kind of thing. And it's just a huge assumption that everybody just understands the same things in the same way here. I was thinking last night when I was told about the subject for today, I was thinking about the success of the gay pride movement and how the coming out of people as LGBT, how it really just got, the more people came out, the more people about it and learned to accept it and stuff like that. And I was thinking about how much the atheist community could really benefit from something like that.
Yeah, it'd be cool.
That's one of the most successful campaigns that I've ever seen is the LGBT community and their coming out and becoming normal, kind of basically in the public eye. And I think that's something that would really, really be interesting to look into as far as rallying together and we exist, we're here, this is us, and you're not going to change that kind of thing.
Maybe. I did want to mention, and this is, super personal, but I have often compared coming out to as a non-Christian to coming out as a bisexual woman. And it is harder for me to come out as a bisexual woman to my family than it is to come out as a fundamentalist as a non-Christian. It's harder, and it's just because the communities out there doesn't make it individually easier for your friends and family. So even though it's easier, it's nice to have this community. It's still, this is like a deep topic that we're talking about. You know, we change every relationship we have around us when we convert, you know.
Yeah.
Maybe not with our non-Christian friends, but with our Christian friends and family, we are vastly shifting our relationships with them. And for me, it's been harder. I don't know why. I don't know.
Interesting. Yeah.
Yeah.
Is it? I don't want to dig too deep. If you want to.
All day, man.
Is it? You know, is it that it feels more personal, or what aspect of it is it that you would say is?
I think, especially for my mom, you know, there's sort of this hope maybe that she'll accept me as a non-Christian, or maybe believe that believe that I'll come back, or maybe there's some peace there for her. But if I brought a woman home, you know, or I mean, I'm with a man right now, but you know, if I decided to be with a woman someday, or we didn't work out, my boyfriend and I, that nail in the coffin of me not only being a non-Christian but also a sinner for her, like not like a sinner, like the kind of sin physical that God hates, you know. What were you saying?
It's something physical she can see. When you say you're not a Christian, there's not anything physically different about you. There's nothing that you can put a picture to, so to speak. But when you see that difference, I would imagine how jarring it could be for someone who's got that kind of mindset.
Oh, certainly. And across like all of my friends, it is really tough for me to say that I'm bisexual, even though they have like plenty of lovely, you know, friends who are, you know, diverse and interesting. Just me going from straight Christian woman to bisexual non-Christian, like it's not as like, it's like, whoa, girl, like taking 2 steps away from, you know, I mean, I think there's Christianity has become more open-minded to the and even embracing, I think, to the LGBT, all the other letters community. There are a lot, I know. And it has nothing to do with Christians and their acceptance of LGBT. You know, it's my Christians, acceptance to my bisexuality, my non-Christian, you know, ness. It's yes, you accept non-Christians. Yes, you know that they're out there. It's the fact that it's me and you, you know, it's an entirely different dynamic. And I really think that depth of conversation like this, what we're talking about now, is just much deeper than just that general, like, oh, okay, you exist thing, you know?
Yeah. And it's not just an intellectual change. It's, you know, it's something that wrongly they perceive as a special case somehow. And so, I can see that might be tougher. So I think a future topic that would be an interesting topic, and I see this like in the ex-evangelical Twitterverse, is, and I just tweeted about this recently, but is about sex and shame, right? There's just so much shame, particularly in the evangelical world, of that you come out of that and there's a tremendous amount of freedom. There's some residual shame. There's some things that need to get worked out, and that might be a deeper topic for another time. So, well, we've done 45 minutes at this point. I want to give people an opportunity to kind of wrap up. Anything else you want to add to the discussion?
Empty silence.
Yeah.
No,
I think that we talked about a lot of good stuff. I think it comes down to you as a person and the relationships you have. You are the one who best knows those relationships and how it will be handled, and whether or not something like that's going to completely sever the relationship, or something you can work through and stuff like that. So yeah, it's an interesting ride, that's for sure.
Graceful, I didn't hear you talk about your kids at all.
Yeah, to some extent, I'm intentionally not talking about them.
Aha! Okay, all right. Never mind. I can let it be.
Yeah, I would put them in the ignoring these facts category.
I see.
So there's no judgment there, but there's also no interest. So
got it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I'm sorry if I.
No worries, no worries. I think that's so. That's a good segue, right? I think we began the conversation talking about the extent to which we still remain. We're using, a couple of us are using pseudonyms, and so there's an element of remaining in the closet per se, in order to protect family members and various other reasons, right? Or maybe living in the South or what have you. And I think that I think Justin, you brought this up. The need to be public in order to, as more atheists come out, it's easier for the next person to come out, and that's definitely true. I think it's also true that I don't want people who are going through the deconversion process or recently gone through it to feel guilty for not outing themselves in super public ways, right?
For sure.
Yeah,
the most important thing is waiting for when you know that you're ready. Because I know a big problem with is a lot of people are coming from very, very religious families, and they still rely on their families for things like a place to live and food to eat and things like that. Because a lot of the people who are coming out as atheists are younger people, because they've grown up all their life in the world of having the internet, and they've learned to use it, and they find all of this information that their parents don't really want them to have, and they start to form their own worldview apart from their parents. And then there's the risk of, well, if I come out as this, are my parents going to accept that as, and all of that sort of thing, where it's really very case by case, where you have to know that you're going to be safe and still provided for if you are to come out as an atheist. Because a lot of times they're really an option. Yeah, very important.
I think that's a good place to stop, in fact, and just to say, that your security, your safety is the number one thing, and people should never feel obligated to put themselves in a dangerous situation, or not just dangerous, but like you're talking about. If you're living with your parents and you rely on them for sustenance, right? You don't need to risk that by coming out, right? So.
Yeah, exactly.
So I want to wrap up. I'm going to ask you guys if you can hang on after we sign off for just a second. But we are, Chris and I have been discussing the possibility of every other week doing a non-streamed version of the Hangout. So that would give people the opportunity to maybe be a little more comfortable, a little more open without publicly airing
Especially if you're not ready to come
everything. Yeah. So the tentative plan at the moment is maybe next week we'll do an off-air, it's still publicly available, but it won't be streamed. It won't be permanent on the internet forever. And then every other week we'll do what we're doing here, a streamed version, to kind of get the word out and try to build the community a little bit more. So I want to encourage anybody who's interested, if you're interested in participating in either one of those or both, definitely get in touch with Godless Journey or myself, Graceful Atheist. Twitter, email, our blogs. If you just Google us, you're gonna find us immediately. Just to last for the sign off, anybody want to just tell us your, if you've got a YouTube channel or a podcast or a Twitter account, how can people get in touch with you? Start with Justin.
Well,
Justin-
Justin's YouTube channel.
Well,
is,
I'm on YouTube as. Oh, you got it.
He's also on Twitter as atheist Justin.
Mine's cutting out. Sorry.
That's all right.
Yeah, my YouTube channel is God is Not Good, and my Twitter handle is atheist_Justin.
All right, I'm gonna have Chris repeat that because I don't think we heard it.
Sorry.
Yeah, you're all staticky now, bro. Justin is.
Sorry.
Is at on YouTube. God is Not Good. He's also on Twitter at atheist_Justin.
Excellent. And how about yourself?
I am here on YouTube as Godless Journey, as well as Twitter. If you want to get my email, it was my original handle, which is a mouthful, myatheisticjourney@gmail.com.
Excellent. Christine?
Yeah, I'm at Forsaking Faith on Twitter with my friend Heather. And you can reach us via email, forsakingfaith@gmail.com, in case we have some really old converting. I need the rest of the. Yeah. And we'll be starting a podcast actually really soon. We're going to release 3 in the beginning, just so that people have, what the most to listen to. So they're coming along there. It's probably within the next month, we'll have 3 or 4 podcasts out for people to listen to. So, 1 podcast with 3 or 4 episodes. So, excellent. And that will be at Forsaking Faith, and we'll post it on Twitter. Best way to follow is Twitter.
Great. Sounds good. And I am at Graceful Atheist on Twitter and gracefulatheist@gmail.com. So get in touch with us. Thanks everybody for being here, and we will see you all next time.